Hello.
This is usually how we portray the world. And this is how it affects young people.
Jeg orker faktisk ikke noe mer. Jeg blir så nedtrykt.
And she's not alone. In our country, Norway, where most people trust the news, there is an increase of people avoiding the news, especially the young people, like you see here. And experts in our country are calling it a democratic problem, but we are in this together. This is happening all over the world. As you may know, Reuters' digital news report found last year that 42% in the US avoid news. The numbers in the UK are 46%. In Brazil, it's 54%. Because of us, people seem to think that the world is going to hell, basically. But we need to see the world with both eyes and show especially our young audience that there is still hope.
That's why, at NRK, we started telling more of these stories. 3 ways the world is doing better than you think. To correct people's image, because most Norwegians got it completely wrong. And as our news director said, hell is no longer our strategy, but it's a good mix. The need is so strong. But this is not only about public service media. We all need to think about what types of stories we tell and the words we choose. For me personally, this whole journey started on a very, very blue Monday during COVID lockdown, where not only the audience were getting enough, but even my family members and colleagues were started expressing mental health issues because it just got so dark. And I just thought like, oh, we have a responsibility here. We need to do more. We need to give people hope. So I pitched this crazy idea to my boss that we should just build this whole new site to make sure that we do that, give people hope. And in only 4 weeks, we built this whole new site where we gave people lots of constructive stories every day. We thought it would only be this small little thing, but after only 3 months, we had 3 million page views and 1 million unique users, which is a lot considering we're only 5 million Norwegians. But more importantly, we reached a younger audience than the rest of NRK. The thing that made like the biggest impact on me though was people finding me on Instagram to tell me like reading all these headlines made me cry because they were so grateful that we were finally doing something, which makes sense because last fall a psychologist told me I give my patients a tabloid news spam. It affects their mental health. But we wanted to take it a step further.
Yeah, so what we did, we made a task force and we made a definition and we set goals. Constructive journalism at NRK shall strengthen and develop the democracy by showing a more nuanced image of the world, pointing on solutions, counter polarization and create dialogue with and between people. And in the beginning, we struggled just to figure out what we wanted to call it. So you know, you have solution-based journalism, but we think that that's only one part of it. You also have to look at dialogue, you have to do something with the debate, and you have to look at nuance and explanation. And as we define it, we say that all of this is what we call constructive journalism.
So we told our top management that we need to implement this all the way from the main strategy to the morning meetings, but also to the coffee machine, because we wanted to create a constructive culture. And now, 1 year later, here we are, and it's a part of our DNA. It's a part of the main strategy at NRK. And more importantly, as of this year, every news department, local office, entertainment, and drama production are implementing this in their daily work, the principles of constructive journalism. And here are just some snippet of things that's like happening across, especially the news right now.
Og hvis vi nå bare legger alt dette bort, prøver å finne ut av hva vi egentlig enige om, hvor det løsningene ligger.
Debattreglene snudd opp ned. Min jobb å se om de kan nærme seg hverandre, I stedet for å drive dem fra hverandre.
Fusjonskraft etterligner måten solen produserer energi på, og kan bli løsningen på alle våre klima- og energiutfordringer.
Noen ganger det små ting som skal til for å gjøre et vanskelig liv litt bedre.
Silje må leve med den spesielle beinskjørheten resten av livet. Men det setter ikke en stopper for framtidsplanene til 17-åringen.
Nå de neste 10 minuttene dere i publikum som tar over, fordi nå skal vi stille spørsmål til deg, statsminister Erna Solberg. Velkommen.
Kan det komme noe positivt ut av dette, og i så fall, hva håper dere kan skje?
But still, this question tends to pop up. Is it just happy stories? And no. Like this story. Last week, we told a story about Kroken, and he witnessed his dad die in an accident in their garage when the car he was working on fell on top of him. Yeah, so it starts with a problem, obviously, and Kroken is sharing his experience.
Jeg var veldig lei meg en stund, og så begynte jeg å ble ganske sint for hver minste ting.
And that could have been it. We could have stopped there and just told the problem story. But instead, he also points to a solution, something that worked for him, the support group for people in grief.
Så begynte jeg på Ullevål, på sorggruppa der. Og så var jeg der og snakket med barn rundt i alderen min, som hadde opplevd det samme, og snakket litt om ulykken og sånn. Jeg husker det, synes jeg var veldig bra.
And afterwards, an expert in studio normalized grief and talk about what we can do for kids in this situation. And our kids' news department even did a whole show just on this theme. But it's not only about news, as we mentioned. Like, what types of stories we tell in our drama series will also affect if we drive people further apart or bring them closer together. So right now, we're in the middle of this big constructive tour to spread knowledge about this and also help people set goals, because we know that that's needed. And the cool part is that we're actually the first broadcaster in the world who's implementing this across the whole organization, not just the news. So lots of great things are happening right now, and it makes me so happy when the morning news headline can sound like this.
Ungdomskriminaliteten i Oslo gikk ned i fjor.
100 potensielle offere har sluppet å bli utsatt for alvorlig kriminalitet.
Our investigative teams also do this, because you can be critical and constructive at the same time. For instance, when we did a huge series on the hidden food waste in Norway, we also pointed at solutions. But first, one of our top politicians needed to be exposed to the issue, the fact that we were throwing away a lot of sodas because of the tax system.
Så dette skal helles ut. Ja. Det en veldig stor mengde, og dette bare på en dag. Men hvorfor kan ikke dere bare gi dette bort?
Det høres kanskje rart ut, men det blir for kostbart.
For kostbart å gi det bort?
Ja, det koster 6 kroner i rene avgifter og pant å gi bort denne flasken her. Det tristeste vi gjør å helle ut produkter som fullt gode, og som kunne vært til glede for til folk som kanskje ikke har så mye. Men slik det i dag, så har vi ikke noe valg.
Det kjennes veldig meningsløst.
Ja.
So it all started with a problem, but then turned into a solution as the parliament actually changed the tax law after this. And now the soda is being given away to charity instead. To create more constructive and democratic debates is also a very, very important part of this. And here's a clip that will just remind us all why the angle is so important.
Og dette et så betent politisk spørsmål at jeg har bevilget meg 2 forskjellige åpninger av debatten. Her den første. Velkommen til debatten som skal handle om at kommersielle konsern, eid fra skatteparadiser og av investeringsfond, skuffer inn skattepenger som skal gå til velferd. De som driver med internhandel, konsernbidrag og tilbakeholdende overskudd, vet du. Og de som blir mangemillionærer, ja kanskje til og med milliardærer på offentlige tilskudd. Vi kan kalle dem velferdsprofitører. Det var den ene åpningen, her er den andre. Velkommen til debatten som skal handle om de private som stiller opp når det er pandemi med testing og vaksinering, om de private som er på plass over natta med asylmottak for ukrainere, og de private som passer barna våre, sånn at vi andre kan gå på jobb, som får barnevernet til å gå rundt. De samme private som venstresiden vil strupe og kaste på dør.
So this was just an experiment. But we also actually quit Facebook totally because we just wanted to create a more constructive debate on our own platform. And when we do debate shows on TV and radio now, we also try to include young participants, and also we try to create constructive discussions on our online platform. So we want to make a space for them where it's safe to express their opinions instead of what was happening on Facebook. We also created a completely constructive debate format to take this a big step further. It was 2 seasons, and here you can see the reason why.
I snart 10 år har jeg leia TV-debatter, og det samme skjer gang på gang. Den beste debatten, den er utenfor studio, på bakrommet.
Som politiker så mener jeg at det er viktig å ta integreringsutfordringene på alvor i Oslo.
Det jeg har lyst til å få til nå er akkurat det samme framfor kamera.
Jeg mener den største trusselen mot integrering er økende forskjeller og fattigdom.
Så jeg har invitert engasjerte folk og politikere hit.
Det jeg er mest redd for er økende rasisme i Norge.
Her kan de få snakke helt vanlig. Og selv har jeg tenkt å blande meg minst mulig.
Som leder opplever jeg store utfordringer med integrering til daglig.
Skal jeg ta den siden jeg er muslimsk jente? Muslimske jenter i Norge har for lite frihet. Enig?
Ja, jeg kan...
And this was very, very loved by our audience, but also the participants truly appreciated it.
Det er kult at man kan lytte til hverandre uten å liksom måtte argumentere imot, men forstå. Vi gjør ikke det så ofte i Norge. Vi bare vil gå og attacke, men her sitter vi og prøver å forstå hverandre.
Veldig lite polarisering, og det tror jeg er konstruktivt.
Jeg tror håp er så viktig å ikke miste.
Framtidshåp er viktig.
Og jeg er veldig stolt over debatten. Da. Jeg synes det var skikkelig hyggelig å sitte her i dag og kunne liksom diskutere på en ordentlig måte. Ikke liksom skulle prøve å overbevise 10 stykker hjemme i stua som ikke er her. Liksom. Så jeg har lyst til å ha mer av det her, tror jeg. Ja.
And to be more in dialogue with the young audience is also something we do with our service, NRK Answers Your Questions. In an example, young people were able to ask the Prime Minister their questions during the election. And on the online platforms, this format reached a record high percentage of young people. But it's not only about these things, it's also about like the more things you can't always explain, like giving nuance and giving context and not portraying the world in like a black and white matter. And so when we, for example, we launched this new module where we wanted to give people just the most important stories right now, we make sure that we also include constructive stories here. And the young department, for them, the constructive journalism is like, it's at the center of their daily workflow.
Exactly. This journalistic method, as it really is the best way to reach a younger audience. NRK News Young, where I work, has a simple goal to help young people understand the world and themselves. Take a look at this.
Vi tilbake med nyheter klokken 21.
Men nå sier vi takk for oss og god kveld.
Da er jeg hjemme igjen her I Beirut etter 2 uker I både Israel og Palestina. Det har vært 2 slitsomme, utmattende, vonde uker.
Hjertelig velkommen til den store nyttårsquizen 2022. Nå skal vi finne ut hvor mye gjengen I 4. etasje har fått med seg I løpet av året som har gått. Annika, det din tur.
Ja.
Er du klar?
Nei, jeg ikke det, men la oss bare gjøre det.
Vi gjør det.
Vet du hvorfor man ikke spør en reindriftssame om hvor mange rein den har? Eller at det finnes 9 forskjellige samiske språk I dag? Vi skal lære deg noen samiske fakta.
Jeg heter Ole Klevan, og nå skal jeg bli reddet opp av havet av et redningshelikopter.
Younger and less educated people seem to switch off because news can be hard to follow and understand. Research says this. So we have found that the key is to explain in a way that normal people can understand, using the language that young people use themselves, and on matters that they find interesting. And this is the sandwich that we provide each day. And we have found that we have 280,000 subscribers on our Snapchat Discover account, mainly in the range from 13 to 24 years old. And we believe that we have succeeded on this because we answer to these 4 needs that young people have. We simplify language and explain complex stories when people feel that they are missing out on something. We try to make stories that belong in our target group's own universe, something that they usually don't see in the regular news, and they get tired of having to perform all the time. They need a break. That's why we want to make stories and news about matters that they care about when they're in this mode that we call the break mode. Yes. As we've been talking about, hope is also very important. These pictures show the differences of grown-ups and young adults, kids really, how they would react differently when they wake up to half a meter of snow. Many of our colleagues tend to make stories about how awful the traffic is to get to work these days, but a 15-year-old would not necessarily react in the same way. And visuality is the last key, whether it is text or video online or a story on social media or the pictures that we paint in our podcasts. We try to be generous with the amount of visual elements. And when it's used correct with the touch and timing, you can also use humor, like one of our reporters did here in this story, when she was surprised that her interview with the Harry Potter twins had already began, and she used this later to start her own story.
Hey! Oh my God, you're... Okay, sorry. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, you're already here. I thought I was going to... You
can go away if you want. Yeah, we can leave you too if you want.
Yes. And her name is actually Funny. That's the truth. And do not take young people's time for granted. Their attention span is not low, like many people seem to believe. There's just so many different sources competing for their time. And we try to remind each other that we're not here to impress each other as journalists. We're here to inform people in the best possible way. And when we manage to do this, people appreciate it.
Yep. The responses we get, like this response on a story about refugees, one person wrote, "Maybe we're about to change our perception on how much we can do for others and how much it means. We can do a difference." And not only does it make our audience happier, it also makes our employees happy. Tordis said, "This work has resulted in feeling better at work. I'm excited for each day, and I feel less tired. And that's not because we work less, it's simply meaningful." So just to wrap it up, if you just want to get started now, you or the team you're leading, start when you do your research. You found an issue. Is anyone looking for a solution? And then ask the experts, now what? Where's the hope? Are there any solutions here? But very important, be critical towards the solutions as well. Sometimes we can change the whole angle, but more important, we need to use our words and explain well and give people context. Give them the most nuanced version of the world. And try to create a healthy debate. Don't increase the level of conflict. Also think about this when you do an interview. Am I asking this question to have like a sexy headline? Or am I trying to help my audience understand? And in the end, ask yourself, do we leave the audience with the right impression of the world? And if you want to implement it like on a strategic level, maybe first find your Ingrid and Eirik, or just find someone passionate about this who wants to drive this like from the bottom up, because that's how we manage to do it. And give them freedom to explore and involve people in setting goals. And you need some dedicated resources in the beginning to create change this way, because it needs to be implemented all the way, as we mentioned, from the main strategy to the coffee machine. And you need to include the whole house. But remember, most of the magic happens during the morning meetings in your everyday life. But also try to experiment with new formats. And remember, changing habits take time, so be brave and be a bit patient. And don't just, we're not all to blame. Like, it's not just the media. There are some other dark forces around. But if we all come together, I believe that we can truly create a big change in society if we just start seeing the world with both eyes a little bit more. So thank you so much.
Well done. That was really a great presentation. Thank you, Ingrid and Eirik. And I agree that every newsroom, every station, every audio house should have an Ingrid and an Eirik. But next we're going to hear from somebody called Klitgaard. He's from, I was going to say Zetland, but it's Good Tape and Zetland. And he's going to continue the conversation. And at the end, we can take some questions if you have any. Go for it, Tav.
Thank you. Hello, nice to be here. Do I have slides?
1 second. You do. Yeah.
Oh, that's also a wrong font. Okay, this is going to look strange. Okay, so hello, I'm Tau. I'm the CEO of Zetland. And it's wonderful to be here after these great people from NRK, because they just outlined all the problems and parts of the solution, and now I'm going to provide you with a different solution, or an alternative solution. Because I work at Zetland, and we have been trying to think about why is it that so many young people actually pay to consume Zetland? We're a news media brand, and why is it that so many young people like us and want to pay for it? And I'm going to try to explain something about that to you. But first, a little bit about myself, because I'm not a journalist. However, I'm a jazz trumpet player. And I used to be a jazz trumpet player. And then I graduated from the conservatory, and I realized that computers are much more fun than trumpets. And so I graduated from the IT university, did my first startup in EdTech, and worked with computers. And then I managed to sell that company and started at a company called Issue, where I worked in tech in Silicon Valley with meaningful reading experiences or small screens. This is many years ago when small screens were new. And then at some point I met these 4 people. They're all journalists, and they had founded a media company. And as you all know, hopefully, 4 journalists are lousy founders of a company. So they needed a 5th co-founder who knew something about tech, because they wanted to do something with tech. And turned out I was that 5th person. And so this is why a tech person came into journalism. And a very, very long story, very, very short. Today we're around 50 people working out of Copenhagen, Denmark. And we're creating this, we're building this habit around quality journalism, and we're doing it with reader revenue only. Then we have also another small startup which is called Good Tape, where we work with transcribing tapes. I'm not going to talk about that today. That was yesterday. But if any of you are working with transcriptions, come and see me. I have a very, very limited amount of these business cards where there's a discount. They also have it at the door if you work with transcriptions. But back to Zetland. I have to show you a graph, and this is breaking news. It's not public until tomorrow. Don't worry about understanding it. I guess you all, when you see graphs going like this, you know that that's positive. We have a healthy business. We've been sustainable since for the last 3 or 4 years. We have more than 40,000 members, out of which around 28,000 are paying for our service every month. Again, no ads, only reader revenue. And our goal is to be the biggest Danish digital subscription news product. We're not quite there yet, but I believe we should be the biggest. So let's go there. And then closer to the topic of today, because we've never said that we wanted to be a media company for young people. But these are our numbers for paying subscribers. Around 30% of our paying subscribers are under 30 years old. And these are people who pay for our service each month. 50% of them are under 35, and 39 is the average age of a Zetland member. There are a lot of reasons for this, and again, we're trying to look at this sort of like retrospectively, because we didn't really plan to be news for young people. But I believe there are 3 main reasons, and those are the ones I'm going to tell you about. One of them has to do with audio. It is today so that everything that we publish it both in text and audio, but our members choose audio. So around 80% of our members, they choose to consume the content via audio and not via text. So the 3 secrets behind our, I don't know, success among younger audiences are these. First of all, I think tone of voice and brand. Constructive journalism also has to do with this. It's about not scaring people away with all the bad things that's happening in the world. Talk to people like you are their friend. If any of you were at the talk from The Moth this morning, I completely agree in everything she said. So great. Those of you who are not there, please see it. So tone of voice, brand, super, super important to speak to the audience as you were their friend. Then we always talk about being customer-centric. And this is, of course, something that probably I brought into the newsroom. And it's a fluffy Silicon Valley word. But I believe that it's actually super, super important. In everything we do, we try to be customer-centric. Not journalism-centric, but customer-centric. And we use audio. It's been a big thing for us. And then the last thing is a little bit harder. It has to do with relevance, has to do with personality, and has to do with engagement. So now I'm going to dive into these 3 things. So this is the overview. I'm going to get back to it. 3 secrets. And I will give you some examples along the way, and they will be in Danish. And so tone of voice is pretty hard to explain. Since you're not able to read or hear the tone of voice of what I'm going to play, I will tell you this. We are trying to be the wise grown-up that tells true stories about a wildly fascinating world in a way that sets us apart from homework. Nobody wants to pay for homework. I think a lot of legacy news providers, it feels like homework. It feels like, I have to read about Ukraine again. Nobody wants to pay for that. So we try to be that friendly person who gets into the cafe where you're sitting and cannot wait to tell you about this wildly fascinating story about something that happened in the world. There's also something about the colors and the way of presenting the stuff that has to be friendly. Remember, we have to be your friend telling stories to you. It has to do with storytelling, but it also has to do with trust. Because who do you trust as a young person? You used to trust institutions for telling you the truth, but nowadays I think more and more people trust people. People trust persons. People trust humans, and that's why you need to be a human being telling the truth about the world. You also need to be grown up. It needs to be correct. It needs to be true what you do, but you have to be friendly. And so the customer-centric thing. It's in whatever we do, in the morning meetings, when we do product development, digital product development, it's super, super important to each and every day, just every time we have an idea, think about what does this mean for her or for another one of our members. Always keep that in mind, that journalism without an audience doesn't really matter. If you want to create a difference in the world, you have to convey it in a way where the audience actually understands what's going on. And I'm going to venture into trying to play some examples for you. Let's see how it goes. I believe that there are 3 parts in audio that are great, and all 3 of them are great and they're essential. The problem with audio in news is that most people stop at number 1. So audio is very convenient. Instead of looking at a screen that you've already looked at for 10 hours that day, you can consume the news while in your garden, while in your kitchen, while driving your car, while driving your bicycle. It's super, super convenient. And I want to start with this example because, as you probably can all hear, this is the morning brief from this morning, and it's not very innovative. In a second, you'll hear a guy in a studio basically reading a manuscript aloud. It sounds like, I've tried to translate it. It sounds like this.
Så skal vi også en tur til Israel igen, hvor regeringen stadig kæmper for at få gennemført en reform af retsvæsenet. Og det er altså en reform, som har skabt enorme protester blandt befolkningen. Reformen den handler groft sagt om at flytte noget magt fra domstolene til regeringen og parlamentet.
Okay, probably familiar to you. Nothing innovative in that. For us, the audio is about the package. So this is convenient, right? This is a convenient way to listen to the morning news in your car instead of reading it. But then what about personality? Then what about storytelling? And I want to show you a couple, or play for you a couple of examples about storytelling. The first one is also a story we published this morning. It's about tourism in Antarctica. And here we used a montaged way of using audio, where you will just hopefully notice that the medium is just so much more rich than a text article about the same thing.
Antarktis. Smag på ordet. Det smager af eventyr og vejrbitte mænds tavse kamp mod elementerne. Af Roald Amundsen og Ernest Shackleton og Robert Falcon Scott, fortidens store polarfarer. Men først og fremmest så smager det af uberørt, vild og jomfruelig natur. Af forblæste isørkener og dybe fjorde, hvor hvaler dasker dovent rundt mellem isbjergene. Du kan måske prøve at forestille.
Okay, so this is a part of our stream where it comes after the other one, the morning brief. Okay, once you know about what's going on in the world, now we think you're ready to a story about tourism in Antarctica and what that means for climate. Another example of storytelling, and this might be a little bit hard. So this is where we use 2 speakers, those 2 journalists in the studio, and we use one of them to tell the story to the other one. It's a cheap trick, but it really works because then it's obvious that there's somebody in the studio who does not understand what this is about, which is the case for a big part of the audience. And this is a very popular format that we have that's called Frederik Explains the Internet. And he explains it to our editor-in-chief, Lea, which actually does not understand a lot about the internet. This is from a most recent episode. I've again written what they say in English, but it's actually mostly about the small sounds that Lea will produce. Aha, along the way.
Der ligesom, jeg læser nyhederne fra dansk politi næsten hver dag, fordi man ved aldrig, hvad man finder derinde. Ikke? Og så begynder jeg at bemærke, at der kommer sådan en mønster. Det, hvor jeg er inde på noget, det er sådan det, man vil kalde for det danske FBI, som hedder National Enhed for Særlig Kriminalitet. Ja. I gamle dage tror jeg også, man bare kaldte det for rejseholdet. Ja. Nå, men de har landet nogle gigasager, som har noget til fælles. Og nu har jeg så søgt aktindsigt i nogle af de sager, og siddet og læst dem. Og det er en verden af jyske gangster med kontanter gravet ned i mulden, og kodesprog, der involverer cocktailflasker. Og det, som de jyske dons, de er blevet idømt mange års fængsel for, det er skjulet.
Okay, I think I'll stop him there. The thing with two journalists in the studio explaining to each other is just a very, very good way of telling stories, because you have to be customer-centric. You have to tell the story in a way where a dummy would understand it. More examples on storytelling. So this is... Oh, sorry, I'm just going to pause, so otherwise you'll start reading the text. So the next example is about something that happened in the studio one day. It's again our editor-in-chief, Lea, who's in the studio with a journalist who has been exploring the world of salaries. And she's been visiting a company where you decide your own salary. And so the episode is about that. And so what happens at the end is they're like, okay, so yeah, interesting. And so what? And then this happens.
Hvad gør vi nu?
Ja, hvad gør vi nu?
Fordi vi kan ikke i afslutningen af det her afsnit... Vi har ikke nogen færdig model klar.
Nej, jeg skal bare fortsætte snakken, ikke?
Så tror jeg vil gå til
Here's an idea.
vores verdens bedste...
Hvornår skal vi lønforhandle næste gang?
Til april.
Du kan prøve det her. Du må selv bestemme din løn.
Okay. Jeg ved ikke, om man kan høre det på mig her, men jeg er rimelig chokeret over...
So what happens in the studio is that suddenly the editor-in-chief gets the idea, oh, maybe you should try it. Actually, you know what? Next time, you decide your own salary. And you get that moment of where it actually, whoa, did you just say that? I mean, is it real? And yes, it's real. And so this is something that is really engaging for the audience, because you can feel you can feel the moment in the studio. And it also evolves into the next and third part of audio, which is personality. Because the persons, the journalists that you want to trust are persons, and you want to convey that. So the next example is Lea, our editor-in-chief, telling a story about death, about Viktor Frankl's meaning of life. And then she ends on this is a very sad story, and it ends like this.
Og sådan lød det, jeg havde skrevet. Det var en af de lidt hårdere at læse op, synes jeg.
Yeah, so this was also hard for me. I know you're sitting and crying now, and it was also hard for me. Just conveying that personality. A lot more examples on personality. You want to show the personality of the journalists, but you also want to show the personality of the sources. You can do that by asking the sources, why are you so enthusiastic about this? How many years have you been working on this? What was the hardest part about this problem you just solved? And so we always try to ask the sources that, because that's where their energy and their enthusiasm will shine through. We also ask them about personal things. They're often very good as intros and outros. So yeah, examples here about something we would ask a source about. Last example about personality. It's very hard to play an example, because this is about just speaking, telling the story the way that it is. This is the reason why we never would use robots as narrators. They're great for convenience. They're bad at personality. And here you'll hopefully be able to hear a little bit of the personality of the
kan du holde ud
journalist.
bare at være? Du vil have fritid, klart, ja. Fritid fra hvad? Fritid til hvad? Hvad ved du? Hvad står der på den liste?
Arbejde, arbejde. Arbejde, arbejde. Arbejde, arbejde. Arbejde, arbejde.
Det blev lidt hæftigt til sidst. Det beklager jeg. Jeg håber, du ved, at det kommer, fordi jeg heller ikke ved, hvad der står på min liste. Men det var historien om den 4 dages arbejdsuge. Nu har jeg talt rigtig meget. Nu er det din tur til at tale. Mød mig nede i bildersporet. Jeg kommer med lidt ekstra materiale, og måske er der nogen, der...
So again, the journalist talks about me, as Ingrid was talking about. Tell my story. Why am I? Why do I think this is important? What has this to do? What does this mean for me? Super important. So these were the things: convenience, personality, and what's that? Storytelling, of course. Thanks. The audience is better than me.
Hvor lang tid?
And then for the last part of our secrets is audience engagement. So we're a subscription business. We need to have a very close relation to our customers, otherwise they will churn. Engagement is wonderful to that. It's also good at other things. We don't call our users. We don't call them customers. We don't call them subscribers. We call them members. And there's a reason for that. we try to build a community. The total value of Zetland has to be bigger than the sum of all our articles. And then what is that value? What is that added value? Well, for instance, it's the contribution section, the comment thread that Mads was talking about. We always invite the sources in. We invite people to actually have meaningful conversations around the journalism. It works very, very well. We do live journalism. There's a lot of things. It's a talk for itself. But I think importantly for audience engagement, we use it for three things. We use it because it's better. People understand things better when they're involved. I like this old. I think it's Confucius who says, "Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I might remember, but involve me and I'll understand." And I think that's right. If you involve the user, the chance of him or her understanding is just so much bigger. We also use them for content. What should we write about? What do you think about this? We also have audience editors that we'll invite in the Google Docs, and then we use them for acquiring new customers, for retention, and for referral. So again, just summing up, the three secrets, I think there's probably more. Tone of voice, customer-centric audio, and then relevance, personality, and engagement. And that's it for me.